Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, the great gray whales of Baja, from devilfish to friendlies, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Maru Marcias. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Over to you, Maru.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today to present this topic. Any opportunity that I get to talk about whales, I'm down for it. So let's just start. And as you already said, the presentation today is the great gray whales of Baja, from devilfish to friendlies. So I'm here in La Paz. I'm an expedition leader for natural habitat adventures for 2 seasons now with the great whales of Baja. And we have just come back from an amazing season at San Ignacio Breeding Lagoons. This place is amazing for a number of reasons. But anyone that has come with me or that knows me a little bit knows that gray whales are my favorite species of whale. I have worked with several species, and the past 6 years with gray whales. And the breeding lagoons are amazing because, as you know, the gray whales are coming from the Arctic, from their feeding grounds to their breeding grounds. So here they have an important place where they mate, give birth, nurse their calf, but also it's a shelter and protected lagoons inside of the Pacific waters that allows them, as I always like to say, to be whales, just to relax and rest for the winter time and just be whales, which is amazing, and have all these amazing behaviors. And not only because of the biology and the way that the lagoon it is special, but it's also special because we have an etiquette there in these sanctuaries where the people behave very well with the guidelines. We have a limited amount of boats, we have a limited amount of time to be with the whales, and the captains are super respectful and are self organized in having these encounters in a very respectful way. So that allows us to have amazing moments like the ones that we've been having this past season. But I want to mention, has this always been like this? Do people know what went on in these lagoons just a few years ago? Has it always been this unique relationship of coexistence between humans and the whales? And how do the gray whales have become friendly? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, tackle these questions. For that, I need to go into human history, which I'm not very fond to it. But if it's human history related to whales, then of course you got me in, right? And if we consider throughout the time how the whales have been seen in humanity, it's actually not always been this relationship and this friendly characteristic or charismatic species, as we say now. And for that, I like to show this engraving of the 16th century of the Saint Brendan legend, because as you can see here, whales were depicted a little bit like sea monsters. And actually, in Greek, the word cetacean means marine monster. Here you can see that it has teeth, that it has a fountain in the nostrils, right? A fountain of water. It's actually as big as an island, so people were actually there in the legend, could actually stand on the whale and did not realize it was a whale until it started moving, right? And also we can see the serpent-like creature, right? So of course, in past times, the ocean was a scary place, was an unknown place. It still is for some people. It's scary, right? And so the whales have always had this fear, respect kind of like thing in the humanity. And and so yeah, for other species like dolphins, actually, there's a little bit more of a divine and messengers of the gods kind of thing that that the people used to have with them. But that's another subject, and please write in the comments if you would like me to give a webinar about the whole legends and stories and myth around whales, because I'm down for it. But in general, we can say that in ancient times, there was a fear for the unknown, fear for the whales, and the whales were like monster creatures, right? So, go into a little bit of the history. As I mentioned, I'm not a historian, but we need to just talk a little bit about the whaling history, because it's very related to our relationship with the whales. And I'm not going to go super deep into this. I'm just going to say that there were four different periods before the 17th century, the early whaling. Then we have the rise of the commercial whaling in the 17th to 19th century, and then the industrial whaling with the rise of technology in the 20th century, and finally the decline of whaling and the start of the conservation as we know it nowadays. So for the early whaling, what I'm just going to say is that it's basically local communities that had access to whales and that hunted them using the simplest tools, whatever they had, and they just collected them for food and materials. So this was a very intricate relationship that still goes on in some communities right now, and we call it Aboriginal subsistence. And it's a relationship of respect, is a relationship where the animal is taken for the subsistence of the community, so for the survival. It's necessary for these tribes, and they take advantage of the whole animal. So this is basically how it all started. But with this, we can say that the Basque whalers in the Middle Age were the ones that developed the early commercial whaling in the North Atlantic, and this is going to be important for us later on. So that's for the general, but what about Baja? It's very interesting. These are some depictions that we have in some cave paintings that there are in Baja, where here you can see that there is a whale, and there's actually other marine mammals also, like manta rays, that have been depicted. And these drawings are probably more than 7,500 years old. And actually, when the Jesuits arrived to Baja and asked the tribes that were there, that were the Cochimies, they asked about these cave paintings, and they said they were made by giants. That's because it was so high up in the walls and of the caves that they thought that they were made by giants. And of course this was not the case, but actually the sea level was more up in those times, right? But what's important to know about these cave paintings is that we have whales in the history of the nomad tribes that were in Baja. Here in Mexico in general, you have the greatest civilizations like the Mayans and the Aztecs, but in Baja, because of the hard conditions that are here in the desert, there were only nomad hunter gatherers, right? And you can see that still in those days, still there was some appearance of the whales, but there is actually no evidence that they would hunt the whales in Baja, the nomad tribes that existed here, but actually probably just ate the stranded whales that appear now and then. So here, if you see San Ignacio Lagoon, which is where we go to do the great whales of Baja at Nahab, you can see a little bit of from a space view that probably the lagoon back then was a little bit more closer to where these cave paintings are found. So it's interesting how the relationship between the nomads and the tribes that were here and the whales was back then. But still, as I already mentioned, there was no hunting of the whales, according to what I've read. But then we have to talk about this period. I want to focus is the rise of the commercial whaling. We have that basically all the nations that the power nations that were expanding through the oceans are the ones that became the whalers, right? Are the ones that started sailing and not just looking for whales because of the oil, but looking for elephant seals to trade, to collect the skins, to collect the fur. And yes, this is how it all started. Basically, in the 18th and 19th centuries, we have the American and European whaling fleets. but they were looking for other species of whales first, right? Especially the sperm whales, and we will talk about this in a second. So they established whaling stations worldwide and started in the Atlantic, but then developed a little bit to the Pacific and to the Antarctic. And then in this particular era, we have the invention of the harpoon guns that increased the efficiency and led to overexploitation. From this time, the relationship with whales is again one that nothing goes to waste, because you need to picture that during the whaling era, basically the whales would illuminate the world. So we didn't have electricity like we have nowadays. So the whales were the ones that were fueling the lamps and in the places, right? In the early industrial nations. So everything was collected, as you can see here in this picture. You have the candles, you have bones that are used for structures and construction. You even have the balloons that are made of the same product as our nails, right? From keratin. They were used for combs, for necklace, for corset stays, for the umbrella wreaths. So basically, the balloons were the plastic of the 19th century. And as I mentioned, the species that was most valuable for them was the sperm whale, because it had the spermaceti, which is a product that comes from the melon of the sperm whale, and it was used in the candle fabrication. And also, this is very interesting, but the amber gris or gray amber comes from the gut, from the intestines of the sperm whale, and it's actually undigested beaks of the squids that the sperm whale feeds on. And it just generates a thing that they cannot digest, and they just vomit it, or sometimes it can be found in their stomachs, and sometimes can be found ashore, and it was worth their price, their weight in gold. It was so valuable because it was used as a perfume fixer back then, and it was super valuable. And another thing that you can see here is because they were months and days and a lot of time at the sea, they would be the sailors would be carving these amazing handcrafts for their families, because they would be months long away from their families, just trying to collect all these oils for the big companies, right? So it's an interesting aspect to know about what was the relationship with the whales and the humans back then. So yes, the basic whaling nations was the United States, UK, the Basques, the Soviet Union, and so on. But what about the breeding lagoons? Well, in this particular time, we have the most, the highest time where the gray whales were hunted in the breeding lagoons. And we just have three periods, which you can see it's a very short period of time, but it initiates around 1846. Then we have like a 11-year period here that is the bonanza period, which is when they invented the explosive harpoon, and it just became so efficient that took to actually an overexploitation and a decline in the whaling of the gray whales. So they were intensively hunted throughout the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century by the Americans, the Norwegian, the English and Russian whalers that were doing expeditions to the breeding lagoons. So it's actually a short period of time, but it just took over the whole populations of the gray whales. And from that, I want to highlight a special man that existed, a special character, which is Melville Scammon, which you probably heard about because one of the breeding lagoons in Baja is Scammon's Lagoon. So it is named after him. So yeah, one of our breeding lagoons of the gray whales is named after a whaler. But it's going to be interesting to you to discover that this man didn't actually want to be a whaler. He just wanted to be a seaman. And even reading about it was so interesting for me because he went against his father's will to go to college. He just started to applying as an apprentice sailman. He just took on whatever assignment he could get on. Actually, he waited a long time to be able to work as a in these assignments as a mariner or as a captain, because there wasn't so much work back then in the US. And eventually, and a little bit reluctantly, he was broke. He didn't have a job, and he was assigned to a sealing, hunting for seals and hunting for whales. So the first time that he took on a whaling job was out of necessity. And you're going to learn through this history of this man that he was actually a pioneer naturalist. He wrote down everything he found in the breeding lagoons, and he was very interested in the whales and in the marine life that he was seeing while he was whaling. So yeah, this is an important character for Baja, and he is the person that is accounted for discovering the Baja breeding lagoons, right? So where were these Baja lagoons? He started off from San Francisco. He was doing all the exploring in the Pacific area. So if you start from here, start going down through the Pacific coast, eventually you would learn that you have the breeding lagoons here, right? San Ignacio is the one that we go to. Magdalena Bay, it was a little bit more known because it's a little bit more deep, so it allows these whaling ships to enter with a little bit more ease. And then you have here the lagoon that would be discovered by him and would be called Scamon's Lagoon, or Ojo de Liebre in Spanish. So how did this happen? Basically, when he was traveling here in this exploration and in these whaling commissions that he went, he heard from other boats, from other whalers, that were a lot of whale sightings. Especially here, you can see Cedros Island, and the inhabitants that were here in this island were actually not interested in the whale oil as the Americans were interested back then. They would mostly hunt pinniped species and pilot whales and dolphins, but they would not come anywhere near these lagoons because they were very shallow and they had waves breaking with the high tides, with the low tides. So they were not interested at all. But when he heard about this, he decided that he had to try to explore these lagoons and try to enter. So next year, around 1851, was the first time that he went with a smaller boat and was able to enter Bahía Vizcaíno, and was able to enter Laguna Ojo de Liebre, or Scamon's Lagoon as we know it today, right? Um, so here you can see a little bit in this map, we have the main gray whaling regions. So as he discovered, remember that he first was hunting sperm whales, humpbacks, and other species. But once he discovered the breeding lagoons, it became just a massacre. They discovered that the gray whales were here in a lot of numbers, as we know today, and it was just so. It wasn't like easy, but at least there were so many whales that it was worth the risk, right? So he entered here. You can see here Cedros Island. You can also see that the whales were gathered here in what now is called Ballenas Bay, or Whales Bay, because of all the sightings that they had back then of the whales. And here you can see San Ignacio Lagoon again, right? And here we see a little bit about the part that he explored. You can see a little zoom right here. So here is basically the first two lagoons that he explored were Black Warrior and Manuela, which are here next to Scamon's Lagoon. And actually, right now, those lagoons don't have that many whales, and you have the ships that sank there because of the difficult of the entrance that you have there. So it was not an easy task, but he was a perseverant, a very clever man that was able to get in. And as I mentioned, after several days and several attempts, he went in the inner lagoon. And once he found out that there were so many whales there and started hunting them, they realized that the gray whale was not an easy catch, was actually a whale that would have a very intense defense behavior, and that is how we come out with the name the devilfish, because these gray whales would fiercely defend themselves, and especially if you attacked first the calf, right? They actually had to develop, and he is the founder of this lagoon whaling technique, in which the boats would stay in a deeper channel and they would hunt the whales that were passing through a shallow part. So they would actually try to avoid the whales because they were so fierce, that they would, the first time that they started hunting them, they would run over the boats, they would injure the men, they would kill instantly the men that were trying to hunt them. And from that, I would like to read a passage that he has in one of these books. So actually, I want to give a recommendation, Lagoon Time. If you haven't had it so far, it's an amazing to start reading about this whole story and about the gray whales in general. So I'll just read a little paragraph from that goes like this. I'll tell you what happened to me in my own boat, says Cammons, right? Up in the hole in Mac Bay the season before last. We were chasing a cow and calf, and I bade my crewmen take care not to touch the young sucker, for if he did, the old whale would pull us to chopsticks. But no sooner was it said than was done, than two irons were flung at the creature, caught in the snags, and that calf was Paumuki, meaning they killed the calf. In less than a moment, and the boat sank. Captain, I've killed the calf, and the old whale is after us. Well, almost at this moment, I told the men to pull ashore for as long as they loved their lives, and when that boat struck the beach, we scattered around. I'll own that I'll never stop to look around, but the boat called, Captain, the old whale is still after us, when I told everyone to get into the trees. So this is, if this is a true or not, I am a little bit not sure, because I don't know what trees he talks about, but it's so amazing to read this paragraph and the fear that they had for the gray whale, and the ferocious behavior when he was defending the calf. So actually, this is when the devilfish is born, the name of devilfish. They also call it hardhead, and they also call it mussel digger, because as you know, the gray whales are bottom feeders. But it's just I just want to take a moment for people that have been with me seeing the gray whales, and I cannot possibly imagine the gray whales as a devilfish. I mean, look at this little calf's face and tell me that it's a devilfish, and tell me that this gray whale is going to hunt you and try to and try to pull the boat, right? So we know a very much different story nowadays, but it's just amazing just to know that, of course, in this whaling era, it was like this. And so like this is that the ferocious, or the vengeance, or the way that the whales were called, it's just because, of course, they were being hunted, right? And this is how Moby Dick's legend is born. If anyone has read it, it's also amazing for the whale fans here. Although it's a sperm whale, it's an odontocete, not a mysticete, but still. It narrates about a captain that lost his food, Captain Ahab, and he lost his food to a struggle, to a fight with the sperm whale, and or the white whale, and it seeks vengeance and tries to find this white whale, right? And what's interesting about this is that it's based a little bit on true stories about sperm whales sinking boats when they were being hunted. But yeah, of course, it has a lot of mystic and adventures in the book. So again, we are talking about how the whales have been seen throughout history, and up until now, it looks like they are ferocious creatures, right? But basically, as I was saying, the hunting of the gray whales in the breeding lagoons lasted very short. In 1857, he could only collect 20 whales. Then in the 58, 47 whales. Then in the 60s, only 7 whales inside of the breeding lagoons. So there was no more whales to hunt. It became unprofitable to go all this way or to stay there just to collect very few gray whales. So they basically hunt them all over until there were no more. And there is actually another myth that the ojo de liebre, which means the hare's eye, it's actually named like that, Scammons Lagoon, but in Spanish, it means the rabbit's or the hare's eye because it would turn red with all the blood, right? I'm not sure how much this myth is true. I haven't been finding the place where it actually is written, but it's interesting to think about it. To just think about how the breeding lagoons were, as you can see in this picture, just full of boats hunting the whales, right? And as I already mentioned, he was not really interested in the whales. And when he couldn't hunt whales anymore, he just joined the revenue Marine Service in the US. And basically, just 9 years of his life, he was a whaler. Um, he wrote this paragraph too, where he basically says that they hunted them almost to extinction. So it just goes like this: the mammoth bones of the California gray lie bleaching on the shores of those silvery waters and are scattered along the broken coasts from Siberia to the Gulf of California. And ere long it may be questioned whether this mammal will not be numbered among the extinct species of the Pacific. So he was actually, you can see how like he was worried that they brought to extinction this species because of the whaling. And so as we continue talking about this amazing character, he collected everything he wrote, every note he took, and he tried to publish several articles. And he actually published a book which had no sailing success, but it was something that made him very famous, and that is still right now is one of the foundations of the things that we know about gray whales. Actually, Science Magazine's article said that it's the most important contribution to the life history of marine mammals ever published, and will remain a worthy monument to his memory. So as you can see, he wrote this book, The Marine Mammals of the Northwestern Coast of North America, together with an account of the American whale fishery. So I hope with all this story, I brought you how Scammons Lagoon is named like that because of Scammon, and Scammon was a whaler. But you can see how much he had this struggle in his life to see this interesting being, but had to collect it because it was the way of living back then, right? Um, and so, yeah, this is one of the drawings that he has there. And another thesis that wrote about the Scammon life says that he actually deplored the bloodiness and brutality of the whaling and actually sympathized with the dying whale. So it's a very interesting character to account. And I think Scammon's Lagoon is okay to be called like that, even though it's named as a whaler. It was not any whaler, right? So from there, I want to go a little bit to this to close up with the whaling history. The gray whales in the breeding lagoons, they were hunted during the 17th to 19th century, and they continue to be hunted in the Pacific. But as I mentioned, they were not hunted anymore in the breeding lagoons because there were no more, basically. But when we started having technology, when they started having the explosive harpoons, that allowed for large scale hunting and large scale whaling. And it is what we know nowadays that, right, they go to the Antarctica and they collect whales in these factory ships that you can have them the process all there, and you don't need a whaling station inland anymore. So this is the industrial whaling as we know it nowadays, right? And as I mentioned, they were still hunting gray whales and other species in the Pacific, United States, Japan, and Norway, up until basically the mid 20th centuries, when the whale population declined drastically due to overhunting, right? And from that, I want to just point out two other examples that I know of that are not gray whales. So basically, I have worked with southern right whale, and what's interesting about this whale for me and for telling you is that the right whale was hunted almost to extinction also. It was actually called the right whale to kill because it had so much blubber that when it was killed, it would float and it was very easy to collect. And that just brought it to the brink of extinction. So, as you can see here, with the numbers, we're about 100,000. And right now in the southern hemisphere, we have 17,000. So we only have around 20% of the original population before the whaling, right? And in Spanish, we call it ballena franca, which means right whale, but it's just a play of words because we're not saying right whale as right, but we're saying it as righteous or truthful. So franca actually means truthful. And I think it's very interesting the change of name because it's a little bit of the change of perspective that I want to highlight, right? About the same species of whale. And another species that I want to mention here that I know of is the blue whale, and actually the Antarctic subspecies. We only have right now 1 to 5% of the pre-whaling population. So basically, once they were able to have these factory ships and they were able to go to Antarctica and stay there for months collecting whales, this just became that species like the blue whales or the fin whales that were fast. They were able to collect these whales. And before that, they would only hunt sperm, bowhead, right whales, or gray whales because they would be coastal and they would be a little bit easier because they were slower, right? But once the human history had the technology to pursue these blue whales, they would just go all the way for them because it's the biggest animal, so you will have a lot of more oil, right? So just to give you some numbers, because this number is just crazy. So just in the 1930s, they hunted 30,000 whales just in that season, and around 300,000 were killed in the southern hemisphere. So for me, what's interesting about this is just thinking about how many whales, gray whales, we saw in the breeding lagoons. Like we saw maybe 50 or 100 at the same time. And I cannot just grasp these pre-whaling numbers. So what if we had this amount of whales right now? So it's just crazy to think. This picture, I actually took it after I saw blue whales in the Antarctic. I was lucky enough to see a mother and a calf. And this picture, I took it one day or out of 78 days that I was surveying the Southern Ocean. So I just saw one blue whale in 78 days. Could you imagine if we had the 300,000 that existed before? Like how often it would be to see blue whales in the ocean or to see whales in general, right? So I just want to make you think about that. And considering that, just a quick concept that we have is that the great whales in general, they actually enhance the primary productivity because they feed on the bottom and then they defecate on the surface. So this means that they are moving the nutrients generating this nutrients flow from the bottom to the surface. Up and down it goes, and it just generates, and actually it's a cycle that enrich the column of the water, right? So they just generate a crazy amount of tons of organic carbon per year. And if blue whales were to recover to the pre-industrial whaling levels, this would actually enhance the fisheries, right? This would actually help to have more of the food chain in the ocean. Just because just something to think about, right? So what if we had this amazing number of whales, right? What if we wouldn't have hunted them all the way to the numbers that we have now? With that, I also don't want to forget to mention that with the right whales only have 20% of the original numbers. The blue whales only have 1 to 5% of the original numbers, and the gray whale is the only species that has actually recovered from the whaling era, and right now has numbers that at least reach the carrying capacity of the system. So we have very good numbers of the gray whale population right now. And so, yeah, it's interesting to think about this predator prey balance, and how actually the whales can enhance the primary productivity and can help to have even more fish and even more krill and even more abundance of other species, right? So basically, we just disrupted this balance so much by the whaling era, right? And because of that disruptory, just arriving to the last part of the whaling history, a brief history of whaling, is that it actually started having existed. The International Whaling Commission is it was created to regulate whaling because the populations were just on the brink of extinction, and they actually needed this international thing so that they could regulate it, right? And from that moment to 1986, they actually imposed a global moratorium where the commercial whaling was forbidden because of the severe population declines. There are still some countries that continue to do limited whaling, but that's another topic for another day. Um, but from this time, I want to talk a little bit about this Save the Whales movement and what it meant, this change of mindset that we have. Here is Roger Payne. Roger Payne, um, long story short, he studied bats. So he was studying the echolocation of bats, and he was shown by the Marine of the U.S. the sounds of the humpback whales, and he actually discovered that the humpback whales have actual songs, or consistent of metric, and have something that actually it could be interpreted as songs. So with that, in the 70s, it started being this movement of save the whales that you would see in the media, that Greenpeace just has these boats that go and get in the middle of the whales and the harpoons. And so it's just began in the 70s together with the environmental crisis. It's just started a whale save the whales movement that helped a lot to arrive to this prohibition and moratorium of the whaling, right? And that's in a general story, globally. But from that, I want to fast forward to the 70s, but to think about what was happening in the lagoons in Mexico at that moment. So you would have, instead of the whaling ships from the US, right now you would have fishermen that are Mexican fishermen that are just surviving in their local communities and just being out there in the Pacific or in the breeding lagoons. And can you just imagine them in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the Pacific, and a gray whale approaches to them? What would they think? Of course, we have all these stories about how defensive they were, how aggressive they were. So they were actually, in the 70s, they were actually scared of the whales, and they would clang the boats to scare them away. But the gray whales would go and just be curious and just arrive to the boats, until one fisherman called Pachico, he said he just thought, maybe it won't hurt me, maybe all those stories are not true, and just allow the gray whale to approach, and realize that they weren't those monsters that were depicted in the stories, that they weren't this aggressive. They were actually very gentle. And he started taking US naturalists that were coming down from the US to the Baja Peninsula just to do whale watching, as they were doing in the US. And he started taking out people to see the whales. And actually, he was very very known in the community in Baja, and he is an important character because he is the first one that kind of like discovered that the gray whales were these friendlies and were actually gentle giants and not monsters. And we could say that he started a little bit this ecotourism that we have right now in the Mexico's breeding lagoons. And so here you can see a mural that we see sometimes when we have a little time in our trips, and you can see this is a place is actually is not even in San Ignacio town. It's in San Ignacio Lagoon, and it's in the Ejido. It's in a small town of only 250 people where they meet and have the decisions of what they're going to do in the community. So they are community ownership lands, which basically means that they choose what to do, and they are self-organized, as I was mentioning 40 minutes ago. So basically, this is the place where they would meet, and they made this mural just to honor Pachico's not fear of the whales, and his relationship to the whales that changed the perspective that the fishermen had, and just started with doing these trips to see the whales in the skiffs, in the small pangas that we go nowadays, right? And it's just amazing because, again, we're talking about the culture and not just the whales itself, but how the whale tourism has helped develop these fishermen communities, right? So, could we actually say that there was a change of mindset? In Mexico, Mexico started becoming a conservation country. So Mexico joined the protection of the whales in the Geneva Convention in 1933. Mexico adheres to the International Whaling Commission. They, in the 70s, declare whale refuges for Scammons Lagoon and for San Ignacio Lagoon. We have in 88 the creation of the reserve of El Vizcaíno, the Biosphere Reserve. And basically in the 93, we have that these two lagoons are declared by UNESCO World Heritage, right? And also the international guidelines for whale watching are now in Mexico's law. So you have guidelines for whale watching by Mexican official law. So you can see that slowly by slowly, Mexico starts becoming a protective and a conservation country. But there are a lot of things that we need to consider of why the gray whales were able to recover, and why the gray whales were are can be called a conservation success from this point of view, right? It's not just the tourism. Basically, with all that we've been saying, we can say that there was a collapse in the whaling, so that just ended because there wasn't any more to collect. But also we started having this movement, the international movement for Save the Whales, that helped a little bit to prohibit whaling. And also we have to account for international collaboration between Canada, US, and Mexico, because these gray whales are migrating through these three countries. And if there weren't so many guidelines and collaboration between these countries, the conservation of the species would not be possible. Also, I like to point out that these conservation measurements from Mexico started being a matter of sovereignty. So Mexico started taking account for the resources, and so because of this, they started to protecting them and to have them as part of their own, right? Also, we need to consider that gray whales in general have a biology that has helped them to recover and are very resilient. And of course, the rise of tourism, the change of mindset a little bit to go from whaling to go to whale watching. And to mention, of course, that gray whales are charismatic species, as we were saying. As it's a big animal that we can see, that we can study, and that we can have access to, and that allows for it being easier to preserve, right? And with that, we also have that it's the most coastal species of the whales, so it's also, compared to other species of whales, it's easy to have a monitoring system so that we know what happens to them, and that way we can generate conservation measurements. So this is only achieved by being able to have a systematic monitoring of the whales, right? And of course, the Mexico's programs of having a lot of natural reserves, declaration of refugees, and so on. So we have all these things playing so that the gray whales could recover from the overexploitation and from almost the brink of extinction. And with that, we have now here what I was mentioning in 1988, the Vizcaíno Biosphere Reserve. We have here Scammons Lagoon, which is a natural world heritage, and we have San Ignacio Lagoon, which is where we go with NAHAB, also a natural world heritage. But also remember that I told you about the paintings, a cultural world heritage here, where we have the cave paintings. So all of this is just an amazing reserve of almost 5 million acres. It's just super big and super amazing just to visit. And we have so many things going on here that it's just, there's no time to talk about what amazing wonders await for us here at the Breeding Lagoons in Mexico. So with that, we have nowadays the communities that have embraced the gray whales. Here we can see this is one of the communities at Mac Bay, actually. And here it says, gray whale, my gentle friend. My giant friend. So I just like to show this picture because it's just amazing how the communities have embraced the whales as part of their culture, and have embraced tourism as a way of living. Um, and with that, we have now just amazing close encounters. Here you can see a calf. We have some of the guests that we have this season, and another one here that just is enjoying being a whale. As I was mentioning at the beginning of my talk, we have gray whales just being gray whales there at the San Ignacio Lagoon. And so it's just amazing, an amazing place to go and to see these friendly whales. I'm just laughing because I just imagine thinking of them about as a devil's fish, and it slips my mind how could be that they were called once the devil's fish. This is Lopez Mateos, another community in Mac Bay, that they have this amazing statue. Here you can see the statue from the part of the dock and the skiffs. And even La Paz, we have a whale pigeon tail, interesting to show, just symbolize peace. And just for me, it's amazing to think about how we have embraced in our culture, and even more than we realize. Here we have one of our groups this season, and just we're doing the gray whales have a heart-shaped spout, so we're just doing the heart-shaped spout, and it's just the gray whales transmit to us so much love that it's just funny to think about devilfish, and now they're just pure joy and love for all of us, for us humans, right? And with that, I want to close with thinking about how much is a whale worth. And this, what I was saying, that we have whales in our culture more than we are able to think of. Here we have again the depictions of the cave paintings of the whales. And we have been talking about the whales, so they have an education value because we use them for education purposes, to talk about biology, to talk about their role in the ecosystem. We can do tourism, go whale watching, and that brings them a recreational and aesthetic value. They also have scientific value because we study them, and they are, the gray whales, for example, are easy to study, so they help us to understand the biology of other species of whales, and to monitor the ecosystem in general. They have an economic value because they bring revenues through tourism. They have a political value because Mexico has embraced the whales as part of their politics, and as part of all these treat. I don't know how to say it, treats, conventions and stuff. And yes, they are part of our culture. How much is worth this cave painting? How much would you say is worth? How much would you say that is worth, that a kid draws a whale, right? So this is basically that they have an intrinsic value, and it's there are some things that cannot be measured through all of these that I just pointed out, right? um, so with that, I would like to close. Thank you for hearing me for 50 minutes talking about whales. Here we have another picture from the social manager of NAHA in our whale season. And thank you so much. And I close and give you over to you, Rob.
All right, thank you so much. Now, before we start in with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the top right corner, you'll see those three lines. Click on that and go to questions. Um, so you were quoting a book earlier in the presentation. Can you tell us what that book was?
Yes, sorry. It's Lagoon Time by Steven Schwartz. Some of the people that have been with us, they can purchase it, but I think it's very easy to find online. And it's this book that I have here. And some things I took from this book, and some things I took from some Spanish things, documents that I found. But yeah, it's basically an amazing guide to the gray whale's natural history, and also to the natural history of San Ignacio Lagoon, and about scammons. And it's a great book, highly recommended for all the whales and gray whale fans out there.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So, what is the best time of the year for me to come down to Baja to actually see whales?
Okay, so basically we have the gray whales. We have them from January to March, but the peak season is February, which is when we run the natural habitat adventure trips to see the gray whales. So I will have to say February is the month for it. Yeah.
Gotcha. And how long is the NatHab trip down there to see the whales?
It's 6 days, around 6 days, and we have six excursions depending on the weather. But most of the times we are able to do the six whale trips, and it's interesting because we have 90 minutes time. So it's six times plus nine to 90 minutes, and it's a lot of time to see them. And every time that we go out is different, and we end up talking about a lot of this stuff either in the whale watch excursions, or when we are waiting for our next whale watch excursion. So I would be super happy to have you on our trips, because that gives me more and more time to just talk about whales, which I love. So
And what else do we do besides whale watching on the trip? Are there any other hikes or expeditions to see different things?
there's no need to do anything else because whales are the no. Just kidding. uh, just basically it's a very whale focalized trip. So basically what we do is mostly the whale watch trips, but we also have some surprises here and there. I would not say it's such an adventurous trip that we can do hiking, because we're actually on a flat surface in the salty flats of the lagoons. But we do have some mangrove walkings. We have some bird watch sometimes. We go to see the local community. So besides the whales, I think the most important part of the trip is that it really embeds you in the local communities, and to see how these fishermen work and what they do. And it's just amazing to know the Mexican Baja local culture, which is totally different from the mainland Mexico. So it's just a world on its own, and it's not just the whales, which for me would be sufficient, but it's actually so great to see the local community and to have the interaction with the locals.
Great. Thank you so much. What
Mhm.
about is Cabo San Lucas a place that NatHab visits? And what whales can we see there if that is so?
Yeah, we don't have a trip to there with Naha, but definitely that's the place where you could see humpbacks. But as I always like to point out, humpback whales are, you can see them in a lot of different places like Hawaii, Antarctica, Cabo San Lucas. But if you want to see gray whales, if you want to like do like me and just try to see all the species of whales that exist, if you want to see gray whales, the best place to go is the breeding lagoons in Mexico, and the gray whales are only found in the North Pacific. It's a species that is only found in here, so it's not as common to see gray whales as it would be, for example, for humpbacks.
Gotcha. That's exciting. Um,
Mhm.
so do both gray whales and humpback whales do all species of whales do they have songs? Do they all sing?
Ah, it's that's interesting. Not all species sing. The gray whales do not sing. They have a very small repertory of vocalizations. They do have some vocalizations that are interesting and that we are actually just beginning to study and to relate to behaviors. But and the other species that sing, like the finbacks, or they have type of songs that are not audible for the humans, but they do have songs. So there are species that sing, but of course the most famous one and the one that we can all hear, and the one that I showed very quickly there at the image, but actually the songs of the humpback whales have been recorded by Roger Payne, and they are on a CD, and they are actually played in space because he sent it as a message of conservation. And this the Voyager is just a satellite that the US sent with languages of with people saying hello and different stuff in different languages. But also there they send some animal sounds, in which they also sent the humpback whale songs. So the humpback whale songs are now being played in outer space, which is kind of cool to think of.
That is very cool. Well, thank you for that. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us.
Thank you all very much for listening to me. I hope I was a little bit clear, and I definitely would love to see you in Baja in our next year and our next season, so that we can be talking about my favorite species of whales all over and so many hours, and go to see them. Thank you.
Maru, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab to see the gray whale, give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. Well, you can check out this week's lineup, including our registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.